ICRT is on the air. This is Robert Parker, President of the American Chamber of Commerce in the Republic of China. On behalf of the more than 500 members of our chamber, I'm delighted to welcome International Community Radio in Taipei, ICRT, into the family of institutions serving foreign residents and visitors in the ROC. The inauguration of this station marks the successful conclusion of an effort mounted by the American Chamber almost immediately after we learned that Taipei would be losing AF&T.
One of the most impactful diplomatic developments in Taiwan's history was the decision by then U.S. President Jimmy Carter to officially recognize the PRC in late 1978. Being Taiwan's strongest ally, the move caused great concern in Taiwan, not only regarding the nation's security, but also its economic development, as the Taiwan miracle was still ongoing, plus the continuity of the international business community, which was seen as key for continued growth and stability. Rob Parker witnessed this firsthand as a leading American lawyer in Taiwan at the time and president of the American Chamber of Commerce. In his new book, Derecognition, Parker recounts this challenging period of time, the foundations of the Taiwan Relations Act ensuring continued U.S. support for Taiwan, and his efforts to guarantee English language radio in Taiwan, or ICRT, as well as the Taipei American School, the American Club, and a youth activities organization, all to meet the fundamental needs of the international community in Taiwan. Let's talk about the book, Derecognition. And it's been more than 40 years since Derecognition and the subsequent passage of the Taiwan Relations Act, etc. What compelled you to put together your memories down to print?
Well, we have a great story, and it's been largely untold until now. Several books have been written about the normalization of U.S. relations with China, but none of them adequately accounted for the derecognition of Taiwan and the impact that it had on Americans in Taiwan, or how Taiwan's AmCham led the response. Moreover, it's not just a story about the past. We're speaking on ICRT, after all. The American Club, the Taipei American School are thriving, and the Taiwan Relations Act is more important than ever to relations among the U.S., Taiwan, and China. The book describes how AmCham coped so successfully with the derecognition crisis in Washington and in Taiwan.
And why now?
Former AmCham chairman Paul Cassingham felt very strongly that only a book would truly preserve the story of what's been called AmCham's finest hour and bring it up to date. Paul and others in Taiwan insisted that the story is at the heart of AmCham's legacy and its future.
So that must have been a very exciting time to be living through, and a challenging time for you as well and your career. How did you forge ahead as a person, and how did this impact your career, both maybe for the good or the bad at the time and in the future?
It really reaffirmed my faith in democracy, just by showing that private citizens like us could help shape U.S. foreign policy toward Taiwan and rescue the institutions that were essential to our daily lives, like English language radio, as well as Taipei American School, the American Club, and the Youth Activities Program. Any
difficulties that you encountered while you were writing and putting the book together?
By far the biggest difficulty was the absence of key files. AmCham, ICRT, and TAS all moved to new locations in the decades after derecognition, and many of the old files were lost in the process. During the crisis, the American embassy disappeared, and AIT hadn't been formed yet. Consequently, I had to rely on my memory to a considerable extent. And fortunately, two other men who were actively involved in the projects during the derecognition, Ira Weislow and Kent Price, along with Don Shapiro, who covered the crisis as a journalist, added their recollections to mine. And crucially, Paul Cassingham found the full congressional record of my testimony to Congress on the Taiwan Relations Act.
Any interesting anecdotes relating to the book that you want to share, and what does it all involve?
The crisis gave rise to some great expressions of friendship. Local people coming up to me on the sidewalk to thank me or express their affection for the U.S. Other instances that are described in more detail in the book, but there were quite a few. The government gave us great support, by the way, from President Jiang Jingguo and Premier Sun Yun-shuen, Minister K.T. Lee. It's a long list. Taipei's mayor and future president, Li Denghui, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Fred Shen, Zhang Xiaoyan, GIO Director General James Sung, as well as people in the private sector like Jeffrey Koo, Jimmy Wei, and George Wu, known affectionately as Uncle George.
Since today we are talking to you from ICRT, and we have a very vested interest in ICRT, what were the biggest challenges that you faced at the time setting up ICRT and preserving English radio in Taiwan?
There were big challenges, many of them, but the biggest was the tight deadline. The ROC government acted as quickly as possible on our request to establish a new English language station, but official approval came in mid-January and was conditioned on there being not a single minute of silence after the U.S. military station would shut down at midnight on April 15th. It wasn't just a matter of simply changing the name to ICRT. We had only 90 days to solve all of the equipment, personnel, regulatory, real estate, technical, and other issues involved in launching a new radio station. And we barely made it. But we made it.
Back at that time, Taiwan was developing. It was the Taiwan miracle. Why was ICRT so important and needed in Taiwan's social and economic development?
For many years, the radio station run by the U.S. military, AFNT, was a cultural lifeline for Americans in Taiwan. But it was about to disappear as part of derecognition. And there would have been no English language broadcasting in Taiwan if we didn't come up with a replacement for AFNT. In that era before the Internet, a local English language radio station was our link to the rest of the world. And ICRT was a huge improvement over the U.S. military station. For instance, the old station had no local news or weather, not even warnings of typhoons. And it made no mention of Taiwan's culture or politics, to give just a few examples of how ICRT provides far better news and entertainment to Taiwan than the old military station ever did.
What was the biggest challenge you faced involved in setting up the American School? As you lay out in the book, one of the things you wanted to save was the American School, ICRT, and also the American Club, which you just recently mentioned. So how about the American School? What were the challenges there?
Well, there were challenges for all three, and they were simultaneous. So it was quite a busy time. But as far as the American School was concerned, the biggest challenge was transitioning the school's legal status from being a U.S. military contractor and then bridging the difference between American and Taiwan concepts of how a school should be run. We had strong support from Taiwan's government for the continuity of Taipei American School. But when the U.S. military's legal framework for the school disappeared with derecognition, a new legal status had to be created. The American community naturally thought in terms of an American private school structure, where parents elect a school board that establishes policies and hires administrators to run the school. But the ROC's Ministry of Education expected to fit the school into Taiwan's existing educational system. In time, we were able to work out an excellent compromise where the school became a contractor to AIT, the American Institute in Taiwan, with a reporting relationship to the ROC Ministry of Education.
And then over the past nearly 50 years, I would say that the Taiwan Relations Act has been one of the most important milestones for Taiwan's modern development, especially in the international stage. In the process of passing the TRA, what were you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the lasting value of the Taiwan Relations Act and our 4 local projects, including ICRT. And here we are 46 years later. And the Taiwan Relations Act still provides the essential legal basis for the U.S. relationship with Taiwan and Taiwan's security. Moreover, the 4 projects, ICRT, Taipei American School, the American Club, and the Youth Activities Program, are all still going strong today.
In that light, what was maybe your biggest regret?
Regret? There are 2, one in Washington and one in Taiwan. First of all, China needed official relations with the U.S. more than we did. And Washington should have used that leverage to obtain a commitment from China not to use force against Taiwan. But that was not done. Secondly, in Taiwan, the events moved so fast during the crisis that the media couldn't possibly give full recognition to all of the people who really contributed to the success of our efforts. People like Dutch Van Gessel and Hal Wilson and Ira Weislow and others. The book reminds us of how indebted we are to them.
And much has changed in Washington, I would say, this year. And with so much uncertainty now in the world situation, geopolitics, how firm do you feel that the U.S. is committed to Taiwan today?
Administrations in Washington change, of course, but the Taiwan Relations Act has never been amended. Under 8 successive presidents, it's remained at the heart of U.S. policy toward Taiwan, and it still is. Former President Biden had a long involvement with American policy toward Taiwan. Now, President Trump doesn't have an equally long involvement, but he's a strong leader, and this is his second term as president. He knows Taiwan's strategic and economic importance to the United States, and he values his reputation as a peacekeeper, and he's taking very firm positions toward China. So there are good reasons for us to believe that the American commitment to Taiwan is still in good hands and will remain strong.
And after devoting so much of your life to Taiwan and to build the solid relations that Taiwan enjoys today in the world and with the United States, how do you want Taiwan to remember you?
A few years ago, when I gave a talk about my experiences in Taiwan to a Taiwan group, I titled it, "The Lucky American." I'd like to be remembered as an American who loved Taiwan and is grateful for the opportunities and friendships that Taiwan has given me.
That was Rob Parker, an American lawyer who once headed up AmCham in Taipei and played an instrumental role in shaping policy during the difficult times after the U.S. switched recognition to the PRC nearly half a century ago. His new book, Derecognition, is a fascinating first-hand look at that period in history and is available now online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. For Taiwan Talk, I'm Tim Berge.